When I go out into the field to deploy seismometers for my own research into Earth structure, we're usually not in a place that has access to electricity. It might be rural Madagascar. It might be rural Minnesota. But this is a problem because we need electricity to run the seismometers and the recording devices. We could use batteries, but we might not be able to return to the site for more than half a year. We might be delayed by weather, for example, during the rainy monsoon season in Madagascar. But that's too long a time for us to depend upon batteries. We need too many of them. So what do? We put in solar panels. We use sunlight to power our equipment. And this is really the biggest area of growth for solar energy, the ability to turn sunlight into electricity, where it can then be used for just about anything else. Now, there are other ways to get electricity from sunlight. You can concentrate sunlight and use the heat to boil water and run a steam turbine. You can use it as a heat pump to generate electricity using something called a Stirling engine. But photovoltaic solar panels are the fastest growing form of solar energy. Photovoltaic panels rely upon a principle of physics called the photoelectric effect, which was actually first observed in 1887 by Heinrich Hertz, for whom the unit of frequency Hertz was named. When light strikes certain metals, electrons are released and become mobile. Well, when any atom absorbs electromagnetic radiation, its electrons jump up into higher energy states in discrete quantized steps, which is part of the foundation of quantum mechanics. In some cases, that energy jump is enough to free the electron entirely from the whole rest of the atom and flow as part of a current, and that's the photoelectric effect. The process was actually first explained in 1905 by Albert Einstein, and it was for this work that he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921.
When John Steinbeck was writing The Grapes of Wrath, he bought a guitar and started to play, not very well at first. On the Great Plains, not too far from where I live, dust storms were sweeping across hundreds of miles of farmland and ranch land all throughout the 1930s. The flying dirt turned towns dark during daylight, and people left their farms for the roads west. So the scenes of migrants living in tent camps without a penny to their name were very real when Steinbeck published The Grapes of Wrath in 1939. The guitar was comfort, and so it's no surprise that Steinbeck would write about a man whom, he said, brought out his guitar to the front of his tent, and he sat on a box to play, and everyone in the camp moved slowly in toward him, drawn in toward him. Many men can chord a guitar, Steinbeck continued, but perhaps this man was a picker. And there you have something, the deep chords beating while the melody runs on the strings like little footsteps, hard, heavy fingers marching on the frets. The man played, and the people moved slowly in on him, the story goes on, until the circle was closed and tight, and then he sang. When he was done playing, the man said, "Good night, folks," and they replied, "Good night to you." And, Steinbeck adds, each wished he could pick a guitar because it is a gracious thing. I'm Colin McAllister, and I'm going to get you playing the guitar in about 60 seconds flat. I have my student Art with me, and what we're going to do is play a little tune with a melodic line on the top string and accompaniment on the lowest 3 strings. It sounds like this. Play the 5th string A 4 times. You can pick it or pluck it. Now we shift to the 4th string D 4 more times. Back to the 5th string A 4 times. And now down to the lowest E string, also 4 times. And we're going to repeat this pattern over and over again. That's what's known as a 1-4-5 progression, the foundation on which much of rock and roll, the blues, and jazz was built. On top of the bass line, we're going to improvise, which means to compose in real time a little melody with just 4 notes on the first or highest string. So, play the first string open. That's a high E. Now, up to the 5th fret, you can count up or you can look for the inlaid marker on the neck. And the 7th fret, you probably have another marker here. And then the 12th fret. Look for the inlaid dots on the top. Great. And with the fret markers, you have a road map to each melody note, and they sound really cool together. So, here we go. Art's going to take the accompaniment, and I'll take the melody. Maybe we'll start by playing the bass line together. 1, 2, ready, go.
The early American West has long been portrayed as a place of wild extremes. Movies and novels often depict it as a land where two-fisted men had to fight for their rights, a place where life was hard and justice was rough and ready. And there's more than a little truth to that picture. You can still get an acute sense of the precariousness of life by visiting Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona, near the site of the shootout at the OK Corral. Among the graves of women who died in childbirth, children who suddenly collapsed, miners crushed in rock falls, and teamsters shot by the Apaches, don't miss the one that reads, "Here lies George Johnson, hanged by mistake, 1882. He was right, we was wrong, but we strung him up and now he's gone." Vigilante justice was widespread in the plains, deserts and mountains of the far west. George Johnson wasn't its only undeserving victim. Even today, the West seems somehow untamed. What strikes you about much of it is its vastness and its emptiness. Spectacular landscapes, sometimes of bare rock, twisted into fantastical shapes. Few rivers, high winds, and extremes of climate made it right from the beginning a difficult place in which to live. Early hopes that it would eventually be settled throughout by homesteading farmers bumped up against the harsh reality that much of it is simply too dry, too high, and too arid. In fact, large parts of the West, especially the high plains, have suffered steady depopulation over the last century. Of the 53 counties in North Dakota, 26 have a smaller population today than they did in 1930. It's not hard on a visit to the West to understand why it's fired the imagination of Americans and foreigners alike. But there's an immense mythology about the place and its history. And while some of it is loosely based on fact, some of it's downright wrong. Men like Buffalo Bill Cody were already exploiting Eastern fantasies about the West in the early 1880s, when the area was still largely unsettled. Indians who'd fought at the Little Bighorn in 1876 participated in Bill's Wild West show, usually playing the role of villains attacking stagecoaches and wagon trains. They were reenacting for paying customers one of the grim realities of their own recent history, and the show surely didn't convey the reality of their own lives as they experienced them.